This is also being filmed, so thank you Deb and Gotti for doing this as well, coming down from Dallas to do these. So I guess we'll kick it off first with our Breakthrough Award honoree, Ms. Lisa Donato. And our, one of our two tribute honorees, Director of Trick, Mr. Jim Fall. And then our second tribute honoree for Bedrooms and Hallways and Go Fish, Miss Rose Crochet. And then our moderator from the Austin Chronicle, Miss Beth Sullivan.
Hi guys. You said hi. Oh. Should I?
Either or.
Should I scoot down? Okay, close. Okay. Yeah. Alright. So 2019, it's a landmark year. It's 20th anniversary of Trick's release, 25th anniversary of Go Fish, and Lisa, we're talking about later this year, your directorial debut feature is coming out. And 2019, it's also the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall riots. And I think with that has come a kind of reappreciation of queer films that I'm seeing. For example, Paris is Burning was remastered and re-released for Pride Month. Locally, we had theater screening films like Tu Wong Fu for Pride Month programming. And I'm curious, I guess we can start with Rose and move back this way. What are your feelings today's reappreciation of queer films?
Wow. I always wait for other people to go first. I really get an answer based on just pulling sound bites from other people's answers. So this is catching me off guard. I think it's really awesome to kind of, I can only speak for like myself and like something like Go Fish, to have it kind of live in the world, you know, kind of as its own thing, you know, and to, I'm that old now, I guess, that it lives in something that is now part of lesbian history, which is really uncomfortable for me, because I feel like I'm dead, but I'm still alive, making work. But, so, you know, like, maybe there's a born-again-ness to it. But I think it's really cool. I think it's cool that, like, you know, like, that you, you know, like that these films are being screened, that like, that I think sometimes we always look to something new and forget what came before it. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really important for us, not only in this history, but in our history of the world right now, that we remember where we were. Mm-hmm. It's that kind of quick to forgetness that I think gets us into a lot of trouble. Yes. But I'm happy. Sorry, that's it. That's me. So I'll like hand it over.
Well, I mean, you know, your movie Go Fish was part of like, and then I made Trick, I guess, 4 years later. Mm-hmm. So I just remember thinking, oh, I want to be part of this. I need to make my gay film. I need to make my gay film. So, you know,
part of new queer cinema.
I want to be part of new queer cinema.
Which is now old queer cinema.
But no, I think we didn't know it at the time, but I think in retrospect we were kind of fortunate to be in that wave, you know. It was the beginning of a wave of indie gay films, and I can't believe 20 years has gone by, but then when I watch my print and see people smoking and talking on payphones, it's like, oh yeah, it's 20 years. But it's exciting. It's such an exciting time now for gay films and video and TV. You know, it's amazing how much representation we have now. I mean, it kind of puts into question, like, what do you do now as a filmmaker? I mean, so much has shifted to TV in such a wonderful way. I think it's an interesting challenge now for even gay, for film festivals. Like, what do people want to see? And I don't necessarily have the answers, which is why I'm making a sequel to my first film, because that I can do. I know that. I can do that.
More tricks.
trick or treats.
Trickier.
No, just trick two, that's the best we could come up with. Sophie's choice was taken. So what am I saying? I'm saying it's an exciting time to be witnessing all these, amazing new filmmakers, and it's great to be old.
I can't really remember the question, but what I will say is that it's an honor to be sitting here with both of you. Rose specifically because Go Fish really was such a pivotal moment for me when I saw that movie, and it just to see a lifestyle that I was so scared of, not a lifestyle, but like who I was reflected. Yeah, it was back then. It just showed what was possible, and I think that's so important. I was just having a conversation with my family this morning at breakfast about, what's next, what do I want to make next, and I have this just burning desire to remember our history, because I feel like we do forget, and I think there is a lot more option right now for people to have the choice to be, gender fluid, gender queer. You just have more choice than we had 20 years ago. And I want to make something where we travel back and remember that, because I think it's so important to remember the roots that were laid, for us. So thank you to both of you for that.
I think it's also important to remember that these things are not permanent, right?
Right.
That at any point, and when you're in that moment right now, where things can be pulled away, and you just have to remember that. And you can't, I'm not saying that you can't relax and enjoy yourself, certainly relax and enjoy yourself, but always remember that we're in a fight still. And it's, quite honestly, it gives me energy to be in a fight. And, and to really recognize that and not think that we're not.
And I think, it's such a joy watching your movies, because the tone of them are so lovely, and in a way it's in the same arena as a lot of your and my films. This is kind of sweet. But I think it's what's sort of subversive about it is you make us love your characters, and that's what I was hoping to do with Trick also, and I'm sure that's what you do with your movies, is, you kind of win over an audience, like indirectly by just simply making them human and making them lovable and sympathetic, and I think that's, in some ways, maybe much more effective than of course there's room to shove it down people's throats too, but you win it over with humanity, which I think is a lovely thing.
I was also going to say, you said this in the article, thank you for that, that's very sweet. Part of the fight is also creating content that normalizes the experience, and to go above and beyond what we have seen and above and beyond just our personal experiences, but to get really fierce and brave and imaginative with our stories, and I love that. That was one of my favorite things, and that's true.
What are your earliest memories of like the first film you saw that had, Billy gay character? We can start with you. It's gonna move down.
Go Fish. The Crying Game, I remember. I watched that with my mom.
Yeah.
I remember that was just ripped me to shreds. The L Word was pivotal for me. Those are probably the top three that I can remember.
Yeah, it's. I don't know when I first saw growing up in the 70s, there's so many negative images of gay people. I remember in high school saying, I just want to make gay films, I want to make gay films, and I ended up making gay films. But I guess I remember moving to New York City and working at a movie theater, the HP Playhouse, and meeting Artie Bresson, who had made a movie called Abuse, and also a movie called Buddies, which made the circuit last year, and I'm so happy his movies are being rediscovered. But it was the first time, his movie Abuse, which I hope comes out again, and Buddies, they were just unflinchingly gay and really moving, and he was the first open gay filmmaker I met, so that influenced me. But I already knew I wanted to make gay films, but that, seeing him and seeing how wonderful his movies were, really inspired me. And I guess Making Love and Victor Victoria.
Making Love.
Making Love.
there's more to love. That's the song. Than making love. Roberta Flack sang that.
Turns into a musical.
That, yeah. I'm gonna go a little, like I didn't know that I wanted to be a filmmaker. You know, it was not anything that I, as someone who was first generation Puerto Rican and like, you know, like it's not, I think, you know, the aspiration was to be a nurse and have like a lot of kids. That was the, you know, the goal. And so going into the arts, which was very much calling me, was not something I could go home and say that I wanted to do. So I would kind of cut school and go to M&R Fine Arts Theater in downtown Chicago. And I remember watching All That Jazz, which is particularly one of my favorite movies. And I know it's not overtly queer, but it seems so queer to me. And the backstage, I don't know, like it really like put a fire in me, like to want to make. And then of course I never saw Midnight Cowboy when it came out, but seeing it subsequently was just, you know, it remains one of my favorite queer movies. And I would put it definitely in that category. So those were just like, you know, I had not seen male friendship like that. I had not, I don't know, I just found those movies very sort of dirty and delicious.
What drove you to center on queer characters when you were first getting started in filmmaking?
My coming out aligned with being in film school, and so it was they were together a little bit. And I did experimental filmmaking in film school, so I did a little short called "Let's Go Back to My Apartment and Have Some Sex," and that was based on a transcript of men who were entrapped in the 70s. The book was called Entrapment, and it was all it was just transcripts from court cases, and in it they go, didn't you say let's go back to my apartment and have some sex? And he's like, I did not, you know, like it's like, did you touch his penis? I didn't touch his penis. And it was just like, so we did you know, it was like kind of this imagery, and I used to steal other people's films and go to the market and buy like, you know, 8mm films and find things in the garbage and just use other people's films. I didn't have any money, so that's why, you know, you gotta take. You gotta look in the garbage. So that was like, they were kind of hand in hand for me. And then when I moved into narrative, then, you know, it was like, I was in activism, I was in ACT UP and in Queer Nation, and we used to do kiss-ins and visibility actions, right? We go to the mall and like, you know, on the way there, you'd be like, am I gonna kiss? And you really hope that you got the person that you liked a little bit, and then you're like, no, you didn't. I remember always being kind of sort of left, you know, and like no one was kissing me, I was just like, I was here, you know, like running out, and we'd run out before the security guards could get us, and Go Fish really came out of that. So that was like that activism that it was sort of born out of, and those are the people who helped make the movie.
I think I just felt a little ripped off as a kid because there was just simply no gay characters to be seen, you know, in the late 70s and early 80s is when they started. So I simply wanted to put gay people on camera. I felt like I spent, even though I was never really, I never had them, I was out early, I was out in high school, kind of outed, got a guy my parents caught me with, but anyway. Yeah. TMI. But so, you know, it just it wasn't even a question, it just was sort of, I'm gonna make a gay, I have to make a gay film. I didn't even think about it as much as it just was something I just needed to do. And even in the late 90s when I finally got Trick made, there weren't that many gay films being made. And like yours being one of the vanguard and in Gregoracki's movies, and even like the Gregoracki, those movies though scared me because they were like, I want to do sweet musicals, and those like edgy. I'm like, am I arty? I didn't think I was arty and edgy enough to be a filmmaker, but then I made this sweet little movie Trick, and everyone seemed to love it. So I was like, oh, okay, yeah, my voice matters too. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it was ever a conscious choice that I made. It was just, I wanted to tell stories that reflected, you know, what I wanted to see on screen, the lives that my community. I'm also very much of an activist first, and I feel like, you know, my wife and I met marching on Capitol Hill, walking from representatives to representatives and educating them on the 1,200 rights that people were not, you know, going to be granted if they weren't allowed the option to marry, and you know, all of the stuff. And for me, I am also very, very invigorated by the fight. And I think by making queer film, it is activism, it is challenging the status quo of what we normally see. And so I just can't see it any other way. And I don't know, it's a part of me, it's an extension. So I don't ever remember having the option not to.
Jim, do you feel the same way that queer film is the same thing as activism, or that they're connected to each other?
I do. I mean, I wasn't ignorant to the fact that making a gay movie, again, even 20 years ago, is political. But I wanted to do it my way. I guess I'm just not someone to, although, you know, I lived in New York City from 82 to 99, so I was there when everything went down, and you know, did my fair share of volunteering. And although I was not in ACT UP, I was in a group called Hearts and Voices, and we would perform cabaret shows on the AIDS ward. It's very much like what Pose is showing you right now. They're actually showing it very accurately. So I did my political activism in a sweeter, show-tuney kind of way, and that kind of is represented in Trick. But you know, yeah, I did my activism through my filmmaking and my own personal volunteering. So, yeah.
What were some of the biggest challenges when making Go Fish, Trick, and Lisa, you can talk about any of your shorts or signature movies?
I think for me it was just money and there's a guy on the roof of that on the tin roof. There's a cat on the hot tin roof, you guys. There was something there scratching itself right now. It's a cat on the hot tin roof.
That's hilarious.
Oh my god. Okay. Perfect. I am done. Let's go. I'll photograph that and put it on Instagram. I think money was really the issue, and I didn't know that I didn't know, which was really good, right? I didn't, like, if I was like my mentor, and we were talking about this morning, and I'm like, sometimes when I mentor people, I'm like, you gotta have this, and that, man. What's going on? You know, and I'm like, boy, if I had a mentor, I don't think I would have ever done Go Fish. They would have been like, what is this shit show you're trying to do? You know, why don't you have a schedule? Like, what are these, like, there's not even a scene. And I'd be like, oh, I can't do this. You know, I would have been debilitated. I think about it all the time now when I'm working with people who, because I've mentored my entire career. And, you know, I think about that. I think about, like, wow, am I trying to take away some magic that could possibly happen? Because, you know, but yeah, I guess you asked me the opposite question, which is like, what was a detriment, or no, you didn't say that.
Oh, a challenge.
A challenge. Yeah, like lunch was a challenge, you know, yeah, things like that. Money and lunch, you know, feeding people. But I love that I never thought that my own talent was a challenge, which it, yes, was. I don't have to know how. It was an unknown challenge.
Riffing off what you said, you know, I remember when, you know, it took us almost 5 years to get Trick made, from when I first found the early draft of the script to getting to Sundance. And along the way, I was willing to sell my soul to the devil to get that movie made. And it was, we went through so many drafts of the script. Jason Schaefer wrote it, and we did these readings with various cast members, and the movie grew and got better and better and better. And, you know, I got up at Sundance and thanked everyone who said no, because had someone said yes too soon, I don't know what the movie would have been. It wouldn't have been what it is, you know. So there's a reason things, you know, take as long as they take. And quite honestly, the script just wasn't ready. And when the script was ready, it wasn't a coincidence that we finally found the money, you know. So the biggest challenge was, as Rose said, is the money. It's finding somebody willing to, you know, invest in you. And when I hadn't really even made any decent shorts. That's why I marvel at short filmmakers. I think shorts are really hard to make. And I think in terms of, you know, 2-hour storylines, I can't come up with an idea that really works in a short form. So giving props to my producer, Eric Darbeloff, who just gave us the money to make the movie. I mean, one man he didn't find it. He used to go home to Boston to talk to his investors who his parents lived in Boston. But yeah, so it's always the money. It's the money and knowing when the script is ready. Because we're all writers, and you want to hand your script to people the second it's done, but it's not. It's in the rewriting, So.
Honestly, the biggest challenge for me is letting go of what people think, and I feel like something that you both have said is that I think it's all a blessing and a curse to not know what you don't know, because I think on one hand it's scary as fuck. On the other hand, you are forced to operate on a primal instinct that I think makes you more creative and do things and take risks in ways that you don't know where the danger is. So that's exciting, and you make these choices. You're like, God, I can't believe I made that choice. But if I would have overthought it 1,000 times, I probably wouldn't have made the same choice. So I feel like every film has been an exercise in letting go of what people think. And in each film, I feel like, I don't know, it's a producer, it's my wife, it's my mom, it's always that committee I'm trying to impress. And I just hope that I get to a place of just being free to not have to impress anybody, because that is a struggle.
Do you feel that there are challenges that are unique to being a queer filmmaker or making films that have queer characters at the forefront, whether it comes to getting distribution or getting producers, anything like that?
I guess we found doing this.
Yes, definitely.
I think that, and it's interesting, given like the L Word reboot, and like I have all these memories, and it's like a whole new group of people, and that's awesome, but I remember like the original, and I think probably a lot of the things that happened then will happen again, is my prediction, which is that there'll be a very critical eye on it. There's a very critical eye on all of our work, because there is, especially something that's higher, the higher the profile, it is, the more high profile it is, the more everyone's like, well, that's not me, and that's not me. And it's like, wow, we have to live in a, we have to unshackle ourselves from a representation which feels so true and earnest. Like, we are allowed to imagine anything, right? We are imaginative people, and I would really love to see where we go next as truly imaginative. I guess maybe that's why I love lesbian space aliens saying, I'm sorry, I got the title wrong, you know what I mean? Because I'm just like, great for you, great. But because it's just like that is like kind of thinking outside the box, and it's like, we always do these kind of stories about us and our lives, and I think it's necessary to get that out of our system, right? And I think it's necessary to speak our truth. And I sit in these festivals and I cried at your films, I feel like those things, and that's really important. But it's important that we know when we are looking at work that this is a piece of work and it's not everything. That we have to encourage people to make work, all kinds of work around queerness. That culminated anything. But,
Do you think we're living in a time of that if we mess up, we're gonna mess it up for all the queers? Because sometimes I feel that way. I feel like there's pressure.
There's definitely pressure. I think there's a lot of, I have to, because Jim, I would be really interested. I feel a lot of pressure, like a lot of lady pressure. The ladies like to complain. Sorry, y'all, but you do. There's a lot of I remember when we wouldn't have a sex scene in 2 episodes in a row. I'd be like, where's all this stuff? What the fuck happened? And be I thought it was my pants were off. Popcorn. It's just there's this expectation of what it was going to be, and then it sort of paints it into a corner, right? And I think that we have to kind of keep on driving. I love the amount of work that you're making because it keeps on driving other narratives into place, right? It keeps on saying no, this is going to be a quiet film. There's not even going to be a piece of dialogue for the first 15 minutes of it. So deal with it, and to kind of and we do need to kind of look at all the work. We do have more levels of distribution, and there is a pressure. I do believe there is a pressure,
What kind
but
of
I feel like
pressure?
the more pressure, I feel the more work we make.
What the pressure is. What do you mean by pressure?
I feel like there's pressure because on one hand, there's an open door. It seems like the door is more open for queer content. And stories of the marginalized or people that are not normally represented on screen. But I also feel sometimes as a creator that if I, especially being a director for hire or something, if it's not received well, or if I, that it's going to like have a bigger, I don't know, negative damage on like a group or a culture or a marginalized community.
But again, if there's more work,
Yeah.
if there's more work, then it becomes, then we become people who are just making, then not, I don't mind being a queer filmmaker. I don't mind being like a lesbian filmmaker. I don't mind people saying that about me. I don't. But I remember feeling very, very, like I just felt like I was in a box that was so small at the beginning of
I
my
agree.
career.
I feel like now, it's interesting you're saying that because you're kind of starting getting jobs for hire, and I'm sure that's weighing heavy on your mind, but I feel like now it's almost like there really aren't queer filmmakers and straight, I feel like it's blended so much now, maybe because I've been in the business longer than back when we were kids. It felt like we really were boxed in, and in
You
some,
don't feel people are boxed in still?
not as
I do.
much, not as much.
Oh, do you guys? Well, I wonder. I wonder, because they're the audience, right? And we're the audience too.
When I say boxed in, I mean like the opportunities to direct, the opportunities to get work I don't feel.
Can I ask a question? Lisa, do you feel like if your film doesn't do well, do you feel like this kind of like,
Yeah.
oh my God, will I have more?
1000%.
But that has also to do with.
Wouldn't that
being a
happen with anybody's
Yeah,
film?
female.
woman. Women fail downward.
No, I don't mean. No,
I know.
I'm talking gay or straight, not female.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, yeah.
There isn't, especially, I know you said $2 million last night, I know you're probably feeling like, that's $2 million. I gotta make that money back. And when you make a $2 million film, folks, you gotta make $4 million, right?
Yeah.
For it to
Okay,
get out of the, for it to get out of the red.
But don't you feel?
Oh, sorry, more pressure. Let me go get you a cider. I'll get you.
Maybe because
Please bring me a beer.
I don't know. I guess I feel like as a older gay white guy, there are less opportunities. It's a good time to be anything but that, because there's more opportunity. I think there is a need for diversity, and there's been enough white guys making movies. So in some ways, I feel like there's some.
I'm gonna push back on that one, but I see what you're saying.
Am I crazy?
Go ahead.
I don't think we're there yet. Yeah, I think we have a long ways to go. I think we're definitely trying to make it that way, but you saw that movie, the representation, the Fox movie, where they're tackling sexual harassment, the Fox scandal. And it's literally a male director, and this is not supposed to, gonna turn into like a male-female bash, but the studio hired a male director, editor, DP, the entire creative team is now they're tackling the sexual harassment scandal at Fox. That's just one example of Hollywood is saying that they're trying to change that, but it's actually not being changed.
I disagree. It's not being changed. I feel like that's one example. Yes, that's was not a wise choice on anyone's part, but I feel like there is literally and I say agenda. It sounds like a negative word, but people who are hiring want to hire more women. I literally know. That's what happens. So I don't know if it's trickling down yet to where you're feeling like opportunities are coming your way because of that. And there are situations. I don't know. Am I crazy?
Just to speak to that, I think that definitely. I remember my agent, who's so politically correct. Oh my God. Anyway, who said like, my straight white men clients can't get hired. Like, although everybody wants the women and people of color. And in that regard, I can say two things about that. in that regard, someone like myself, who is Puerto Rican, but it's not overt, like people will probably think I'm Jewish before they think I'm Puerto Rican, right? Or just like, like literally my agent said to me, oh my God, if I knew you were Puerto Rican, I could have gotten you a bunch of jobs. I'm like, how about the 25 hours of television I've done? Like, how about that?
Seriously.
Number one. But, but just to say, like, she's like, like, so there is that, which is, but it's divisive. Not that you're trying to make it that way. It's just that we're being pitted a little bit. And the jobs that women get hired on, and the jobs where women are actually in charge, are jobs that have a budget that is so much smaller. Right? There are all these shows for women, right? There are all these kind of things. I'm sure we all want to do Fleabag, you're not gonna. But, but it's, maybe you will, I'm sorry to be negative. But like there are all these shows, and a lot of them are done for a quarter of the budget, right? It doesn't, and women talk about in television, like if you fuck up on your episode, you're not getting back in there, sorry. If you go over each day, right? So when I say go over, I mean you're given X number of hours a day to get your day done, and you're just like, sometimes you're given impossible hours, and you're like, well, this is kind of impossible, and they're like, can't you handle it, And there's this really intense pressure on women. So I don't know if what we've been handed is something that's like a challenge almost. It's not being handed like, oh, I believe in you as much as I believe in a man. There's not that. They're not equivalent at all. It's like they actually don't. They're just like feel like a pressure to hire us, and they're just like, get out there, fail, so I can like put a fucking man in there again, because men are the people who know how to direct. And I know we're in a moment right now where women are being hired more. So you can put your eyebrows down. I'm looking at you.
I'm just saying, I'm a white male, so that's not my experience, but yet every movie after Trick, I've been hired by a woman. Every line producer has been a woman, and that's been a great thing. And I don't mean to imply that there's not a challenge. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I don't know. I'm not living in the trenches. I'm not a woman, so I don't know.
But women still aren't in charge. When you say every woman's a line producer, yes, they put
Well,
women out there.
Nina Jacobson was the head of Disney. I mean, I'm saying that was. I'm just saying.
Nina was the head.
My experience.
No, tell me more. Who are the head of anything?
Yeah.
You've got a million
Well,
VPs who cannot make a decision to pull a fucking trigger.
Yeah.
Sorry. I mean, I'm not.
Yeah.
They're more than there used to be. But why are we begrudging that? Why are we begrudging the flip? Even.
Yeah.
I mean, on some level.
I'm not sure what the point is anymore. I'm not sure what point I'm
I
trying to
feel
make.
like we're fighting.
This is awesome.
I love you, your face. I'm trying to say nice things.
It's a good conversation.
Poor line producers. They're so hairy. It's like the worst job in the world for women, and it's always a woman in there, a 50-something-year-old woman who's like, I don't know.
Chain smokers.
Yeah, it's like chain smokers and money truckers.
I also wanted to talk about. How tech has disrupted the independent film industry, and I'm thinking about how when Go Fish premiered at Sundance, they got picked up by a distributor, and now it's like you got your film out there with the distributor, and now you have streaming platforms and the internet that allows you to totally bypass that to get your work out to a wider audience. And I'm curious about everybody, because from working in the early 90s and you're working today, how the internet is
I'm still working today.
Well,
And technically, I was late 90s.
how streaming platforms and the internet had changed your ability to get your work out there. Because I'm thinking about how a signature move, like you can buy that on Amazon Prime, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not the best person to answer this for sure, but how all of my work, how I've worked it is film festivals. I mean, film festivals have been how I've built community, showed my work, and Signature Move was screened in 172 festivals, and then it got like a limited theatrical release, and then it went to VOD. So it actually, toured the world for 2 years, and then finally went to VOD, and now you can buy it. So I think the festival circuit is still one of the filmmakers' greatest assets. I hope that never changes. That's been my experience.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have, I mean, I've made 2 features and 4 TV movies, so I'm not sure streaming has played a huge role, but other than once they're on streaming, it's like, oh, that's how many people watch that movie. So it's kind of a nice barometer of what the movie's doing, I guess, but not being a short filmmaker and not really launching my stuff directly that way. Although making the sequel to Trick will be, it'll play a huge role, I'm sure, so I guess I'll be able to answer that question next year.
I really welcome the platforms. I think that there are things that had never gotten distribution before that are able to have like these, that are accessible. Like you can like look something up and you're most likely able to find it. And that wasn't the case before. I mean, we really have, we're really in a moment right now that I think, the hard part is like, does the filmmaker see any revenue? But that's always been the case, right?
Yeah.
It's why independent filmmakers cannot sustain a living, right? It's like, it's not plausible, it's not feasible, right? Your MG is like, you know, like your advance is gonna be like $40,000 on a $1 million movie, and you're gonna be like, ugh, how do I even live? You don't, you go and work in television, or you come up with a show, or you work in such a way like Lynn Shelton, who, you know, made tiny movies in Seattle for years with friends, you know. We don't have like really a support system, but we do have a system where if you have a film, you put it on Vimeo, you charge X number of dollars per, you know, a lot of this is like a little more DIY. So you're not just a filmmaker anymore, you also have to be your own PR person, and you have to push your content forward. And that's a tough place to be. But I remember when we went to Sundance with Concussion in 2013, and you know, we sold that it's a very similar story to Go Fish. You know, we sold that within the first 24 hours of the festival, just like Go Fish got sold, and we sold it, and we made ourselves whole, plus a profit. So it was another anomalous sale, right? It was another kind of thing like that. But we went, you know, we were at that moment when it was going, we had a theatrical release, but we were also day and date, which means that you're also on a platform. The same day that it's released in a theater, it's available on Netflix, right? So, you know, how do everyone keeps on trying out these different kind of release models. And I don't know that that's a really great one, because like, why are you gonna go to the theater if you just download it at home, you know?
I was gonna say one more thing. That something that you said is, I think that for me, you know, when you just had a couple of films that were your reference point, that showed you what was possible, now it is about accessibility. And now it just has multiplied by so much, having so much out there, and sometimes it feels like it's so saturated, but it also feels really exciting to be charged by that much more content. I feel a lot more inspired over the last couple of years, seeing things like Vita and Fleabag. I mean, it's just like the level up game is happening all the time, and that's really exciting to me. So I think accessibility is spot on.
Yeah, and I think the works that we're talking about with Trick or Fish and your work too, Lisa, that they're all pretty positive films, right? Like queer characters aren't dying, which I think is something everyone here has somebody that feels like a lot of time asks for sometimes in TV and film. And I think that also speaks to a larger trend that's happening in TV and film now, with more positive representation of queer characters, where their storyline isn't so much about their struggles of being queer, right? And I'm curious if you also see that trend happening, and on the flip side of that, do you think do we lose anything when TV and film moves away from depicting struggles of queer people?
If I can say, 20 years ago when I made Trick, that's one of the reasons I wanted to make Trick, was for that very reason, because it's not a movie about being gay. It's about people who happen to be gay and they're humans, and they were just it was just a love story, basically. So, and I didn't even so consciously understand how powerful that would be to especially young viewers. I've got what's been so nice about this 20th anniversary thing with the movie is guys who were 15, 16, 17 and saw Trick back in 1999 said, you know, that's the first game movie I ever saw, and it helped me come out. It made me realize that there's a life out there, and I kind of realized in retrospect, well, it's true. I made a movie about the people I knew, and the fact that there's no homophobia in the movie. Even the straight roommate, he's not a homophobe, he's just an asshole, you know, and that actually is a powerful statement. And, you know, the flip side is, though, I would love to see more movies that just aren't completely positive about gay people, because I feel like we need more diverse voices. We need, even back 20 years ago, there was this movie that came out it was called Hard, and it was about and it was about a gay serial killer stalking his cop. And I remember, and it's, you know, you can decide whether you think it's a good movie or not. But I actually went to the filmmaker and said, you know what, I'm really glad you made this movie about a gay serial killer, because I'm just kind of, I mean, I only make romantic comedies, but it's like I'd like to see more variety of subject matter than just happily ever after, you know. So, you know, yes, gay serial killers.
Gosh, I don't know, when I was thinking of the question, I thought more about, like, I feel like I think we need to see, I mean, the wonderful thing about doing Vida is, like, you know, seeing stories of people of color, you know, Latinx stories, and people struggling with their whitewashedness, you know, like this is the first time I ever heard, like Latina, and I'm just like, oh my God, is that me? You know, like issues of assimilation and what are truly stories of people of color, not told by white people, sorry, no offense, but told by the very people who want to tell the story and who have that experience. And I know I'm talking out both sides of my mouth, because earlier I said, don't do, you know, we should be able to do whatever story we want to do, right? But there is a part of me that wants people of color to be able to tell their own stories and their own stories of queerness, and people who don't have money tell their stories. It is freaking hard to transition when you don't have money, for example. You know, that's a very costly thing, you know, to get the proper care. What do you do when you're like, we're not seeing those stories in a show, when we're seeing people, particularly transition, we're kind of glossing over the economy that is you know, that is there and is something that is something that needs to be dealt with. Electrolysis alone, if you're transitioning, you know, from M to F, you know what I mean? Like it's huge, and you're you know who it is you want yourself to be, and you know, we tell these stories again, you know, that I think we don't like I think that in part of the prettiness of everything, we lose the struggle, the financial struggle, someone losing a job, and what was that? Like there's 31 states where you can't work. Like you're allowed to be fired if you're, you know, wasn't it in your piece? That you're allowed to be fired if you're queer, if you come out. Yeah, here in Texas.
Yeah.
You know,
State,
that's
yeah.
like, how do you feel? How do you relax? How do you relax? How do you say like, we're here and we're married and we're trying to be freaking happy, but we're scared as hell, and like, don't hold my hand, maybe a coworker, you know what I mean? Like that sort of thing. I think we need to see it a little bit more. I love a fun story, I really do, but there's a struggle still, and I really feel like, I mean, I love the short work because you see it a lot. Like you see it, like you're working like stuff like, and I think those need to be like those stories need to be put into serialized form, into a series, into stuff that gets out to a wider audience.
It's a very interesting responsibility that I personally take very seriously, and the first feature that I directed recently, I can't blow the ending because it's a spoiler alert, but basically part of the contract of coming on that project, I rewrote the ending, and it, you know, I had to really think about what this ending meant. And was it authentic? You still want to be authentic. We don't want to keep replaying the same tropes that put, you know, queer people in a certain way that only, you know, it's only a fixed way of seeing. This is the only, they only die, or they only or sex workers or whatever it is, but I had to rewrite an ending and really research what that meant, which was really, really hard. And it plays right into this. This may sound very nebulous right now, but I had the responsibility of changing this character's destiny in this film. And that was really one of the hardest career decisions I've ever had to make, because I wanted it to be authentic, but I also wanted to put something refreshing, and not, happy ending, but something that we don't see over and over and over again. So I hope it works out.
I think on this topic of authentic representation, thinking about kind of shows like Vita, where there's very much of a move to not only have diverse characters on screen, but that diversity is also happening behind the camera as well, and that you have people who identify with the characters also writing these characters. And, these sort of heroes, what do you see as the ideal solution to creating more authentic representation behind the camera and in front of it for queer characters?
Well, I think I already answered part of what I would like to see, which is more people of color, more a diversity of class would be really great. I think we don't like to tell stories about people who are poor, and I think that that's highly problematic. When you look out on the street and you see the homeless population here, I don't think, you get pretty much shut down. And I think that there's real truth there. It's not just about queerness, it's queerness compounded, right? And those are like stories that I would like to see, how, it's not, sometimes it's not just a struggle of coming out. Sometimes it's like, I'm accepted here, so I'm gonna stay here, I'm comfortable. But I'm not moving further in my life because I can't get out of my bubble. Like a lot of us who've been gay for a while, who've been queer for a while, get our bubbles and our friends and our things, and we don't want to leave it, right? It'd be interesting to see a story where someone tries to leave it. But I think that in terms of like what it is we're seeing, I think it's just a more complex, compounded narrative, right? That's not just about an identity, like, living an identity, but which is really about like the complexity of one's life while having this identity, which does complicate many things. So, you see it a lot. Sometimes we just oversimplify for the sake of entertainment.
Because the sequel to Trick is on my mind. Trick is a very white film. Everybody's white. The Go-Go Boy is Latino, although the actor I don't think actually is. So in developing the sequel, I'm like, all right, I got this completely white movie. I've got to, I actively wrote it to include new characters that are much more diverse to fill it out. And I think you just have to walk the walk and talk the talk as far as hiring people on every level, behind and in front of and in the story. And it's really that simple. Just get out of your comfort zone or your whatever it is and hire people, hire people of color, hire, and as far as writing's concerned, I wrote characters that could be whatever. But at the same time, I think it's frustrating when you are casting a movie because people who don't know how movies get made think you have every choice in the world. And so you don't have every choice in the world. You have whatever actor comes into your casting office, and the flip side is you can't just plug someone in because of their color if they're not right for the part or they're just not a good actor. I mean, that's the challenge, is how do you cast a wide enough net, find the diversity, and it gets the same thing behind the camera. Like, you can't just be diverse for diversity's sake. That doesn't help anything. You have to find the people who can do the job and do it well, but make that extra effort. And I think it takes an extra effort, and so you have to just make the extra effort. And just one thing I want to say, riffing off of your changing the ending of your movie, I had the same dilemma, although I don't know what the ending of the movie is, and mine's, I'm sure, a less dramatic thing. But the original script of Trick was the two boys ended up fucking in a bathroom. And it's like, I'm not sure that was the movie I wanted to make. And so when Jason Schaefer, the writer, and I talked about it, the first sort of big idea that we decided on was, that's why they almost kiss in a bathroom, because gay men especially, will probably only have a history of having sex in bathrooms from the beginning of time. And I did not want to have my two characters have sex in the bathroom. So I thought, all right, I'm going to have them almost have sex in the bathroom, and then leave, and then kiss out in the open, in the daylight, on the corner of a street in New York City, in the sunlight. And that was a very specific choice I made to shift the movie because of representation and what I wanted to put out there.
Yes, everything you both just said. Also, I think it's interesting, and I don't know if either of you had this experience, but where the story that you're making on screen sometimes happens behind the scenes. And on my feature film, this was just, it's a huge story, but I'll try to tell it short. I had brought out my feature has a trans woman of color as the main character. And my DP also happens to be trans. And she had just came back she was like 3 months out of gender, reaffirming surgery.
Reaffirming.
That's what she says.
Behind the times.
And we flew to Louisiana, and we were shooting in the deep south. Like, it was about hour and a half from New Orleans, and we had a local crew, and it was a very male, cis male crew. And I don't think any of them had ever worked, with this kind of content, with this kind of crew. And every single day she had to, and she's very open about this, she's on podcasts talking about it, but it was a very hostile environment for a while. And we had to change some things. But one of the things I had to do was make sure, she was safe doing a certain kind of physical therapy during set after her surgery. And these big guys would go and tape down the door, and I could see that this experience was changing, and they were starting to ask questions. And so I think what's really exciting about the content that we're making on the screen is really affecting everybody behind the scenes too. And I work on a lot of doc too, and I know that when I'm out there on the streets talking to people and I'm seeing the crew get impacted, that's one of the most exciting things to me. And I don't know how to answer that, but
Yeah, that's great. So we have 10
The one
minutes.
thing I liked about this, you're right, we have to, it's not, I think what I sometimes have an issue with in terms of diversity is white people feeling a particular amount of guilt and saying, oh, let me take this character that I intended to be white and just flip them, make them a person of color. And you can't, we're not interchangeable, right? Per se, it happens a lot. I think that when you do create a character, you have to create them from the very beginning as what you intend them to be, number one. Second, you're totally right. There are such amazing crews out there, and we can have really diverse crews. It's really awesome. I remember doing a thing that I did called Sugar, and it was really I was just like, wow, we can have a baseball game where the Dominicans versus the Puerto Ricans back here. It was really fun. It was the first time that I had done that in my career, where I was just really crewing up and really making sure that I was hiring the best people for the job, and those people fit everything I wanted it to be, But yeah, I think it's definitely, we definitely look behind them. There's 35 people that you have working for you, so who are making that thing happen. But it's definitely, us as makers need to do that too. Not just think only a male DP is the best DP, for example.
Well, I think, is it time to open up for a Q&A? Okay. Does anybody want to lead us off?
Tell us about the energy you had on your first film and your expectations for the sequel. The energy actually on the set.
Well, it was your first movie. 20 years ago, it's such a blur in a way. But like I was saying earlier, I felt like I was spoiled by that movie because it was everybody's first movie, so everybody was giving 150%, and we were all just so happy to be there. Now, it's, you know, it's hard as fuck to make a movie. It's really hard. So you're working like dogs and not getting paid much, but there was just so much joy to just be there and be able to do this thing, you know, and I feel like I'm a late bloomer too. I didn't make that movie in my 20s. I made that movie when I was 35. So it took me a long time to get to my first feature. You know, the interesting thing making a sequel now 20 years is I'm a different person, and I want that same feeling. I'm not sure it's going to be the same. It's not going to be. It's going to be a different good. It's going to be good in a hopefully completely different way, because it'll be a new group of people, and it'll be a new bunch of good, but I'm different. I'm going to it'll hopefully be a joyous experience too. You know, I've made 6 feature-length movies, and 5 of them were wonderful experiences. So, you know, that last Christmas movie almost killed me. So I'm hoping that it'll be the same. Yeah.
I have a question. So I'm going to reopen something that got a little heated up there earlier, and something specifically Rose, you spoke
Look at the time.
I'm an engineer in the tech space, and we refer to this phenomenon that you talked about earlier, pulling women into positions to kind of clean something up or give them something that's kind of teetering on the edge of, you know, but we all take it because it's an opportunity and we're not used to it. They call it the glass cliff. So they pull this whole kind of thing that happens to give us the opportunity to go in there and try to fix something. It's a lot of pressure to try to carry that load. Have you ever had that experience, the glass cliff?
I have seen the glass cliff. I have not walked on it. I probably my whole career I've walked on it actually. What am I talking about? You know, I made my 3rd feature. You might wonder why I haven't made another feature in so long, but I think I've had 7 movies fall apart. And when I say fall apart, I mean get all the way there and not happen. Because, and this is not, you know, the answer to that exactly, but I think when I made Safety of Objects, it was an $8 million movie. It started at 7 and went up by $1 million during, and if you know anything about that, that's a gross mismanagement of money. I was not the producer on that movie, but I was also responsible for that making its money back. And like I said, when it's an $8 million movie, you want to make 16, right? You want to make double that, or at least that amount of money, because there's all this stuff. So you really put yourself behind the 8 ball. And I don't get brought in that way to come and fix a mess and the challenge of that. But I do work, I mean, I've been working in VR since 2014. It never ceases to amaze me when I go into the office, even the offices in Dallas. I'm working in Dallas. I have to go to work on Monday in Dallas, and you know, at this I'm at flight school, which is, you know, a huge kind of place, and you know, one city block in downtown, you know, Dallas, and maybe there's 10 women in that whole floor, and I know that what's happening is that a lot of them are doing administrative, a lot of them are doing secretarial, a lot of them are doing what ladies do best. They're putting the food out for us, they're caring for us, they're making sure that that idea that man has is being like distilled and brought out because he's a tech guy and maybe he doesn't have the good social skills, so she's gonna be the interpreter, you know, and you know, I mean, I'm an atheist, but God bless those women, because they are the ones that facilitate the thing that I need to have happen, right? But it would be, and I don't know how far they can go, you know, and I have all these friends who are like, leave these positions and kind of venture out into the world and say like, you know what, I want to start my own thing, or or they have a story of like sexual harassment that I'm like, oh my God, that's awful. It's like, no, I was there, I did it. You know, it was the boss of the company, you know, these things that I'm just like, oh my God, this is like, tech's a freaking difficult place to be. And I'm sorry that you're working at it. No, I'm not, but it's like, it's a super dude world. And so I'm sure that you feel that ceiling all the time. I do episodic to make money, you know what I mean? I feel the whole thing, and fortunately when I do VR, I'm, you know, I get in there, like someone's believed in me to make this piece, right? So I don't feel it like as much, but I certainly feel a failure of it because this project is actually a, you know, Oculus, Facebook owns Oculus, right? The contract that I have is like, if they don't like it, it all goes back to me, right? And I'm like, I don't think they do that to a man, but I'm like, I'm sure they could trigger that with me. You know what I mean? Because it's easier to get away with shit with women. Because women are just like, did I not do a good job? You know, we're so much more easily kind of made to feel guilty and like, you know, I'll give you your $200,000 back, you know, like, you know, I don't know how, you know. At this point, it's $2 hand jobs, I don't know. You know, I don't know if anybody, you know.
Do you have any other questions? I have a question. Any feelings, and this is for anybody, but any feelings on the new Elmer teaser trailer?
I haven't seen it.
Okay.
I know.
I haven't seen it either.
The new one?
Anyone also can share their feelings in the
I
crowd.
haven't seen it.
Oh, come
It's
on,
an
Liz.
updated version of the old L
There
word.
you go.
Yeah, yeah.
It's an aspirational world. It's, you know, it'll be, everyone will love it. Yes. Oh, you've seen it. Thoughts?
My one comment about it is you know, as any avid L Word, you know, I watch the L Word, and the thing I'm a little sad about with the casting is I don't see anybody who's dark skinned in the cast. So even the people of color, there's nobody who's representing a dark skin narrative of any of those spaces or any of
It's like the higher the budget, the lighter the skin.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, and we just have to be upfront about that. You
Yeah.
know, we just have to be kind of upfront about that, and we just realize that and especially like if you are searching for, didn't we have the conversation about like one day at a time, or like, you know, like, I'm having like this kind of love affair with these shows that are like these half-hour shows on like, you know, like, I don't know if anyone else has watched the One Day at a Time reboot, or if you feel like it's not taking you because it's all, you know, Latinx, but it's so wonderful, you know? It's so like Norman Lear, like, kind of like updated, which is just like, you're really talking about skin, they do a whole thing about skin color, you know, like about lightness and darkness, which happens for all of us, right? Like your people, my people, right? The darker you are and the lighter you are, the more, you know, the more like elevated you are, the more Spanish in my case you are, you know, we're like, I don't know, closer to God, whatever. But yeah, it's a real, like, having been there the first time and like, you know, kind of like, I remember when Sarah Shahi was playing someone who was Mexican, and you're just like, oh my God, there's so many actors who are so talented, who can fill this role, and we're not doing that. Oh, it just seems shameful. Like, you know what I mean? But it's still, you're still talking about a show that's got a white, I'm not trying to vilify either, but it's really hard to know what is important. It's like, sometimes I try to think about myself as a man, right? And think like, what are the, you know, because I think we vilify men a little bit, and like, what would be the like the things that I'm happy I'm not a man, because I'm happy that I don't feel like certain pressures to be this or that, you know what I mean? I feel bad for men sometimes, like, that they have to do this, that they have to talk in sports language when they're, you know what I mean? Like I see my friend's father, and all he can do is like, I don't think he even likes sports, but it'll become like a thing to say, like, oh, then, you know, like, and it's like, I know he doesn't care. But, you know, he's just like, I'm gonna be around other dudes, like, I could see him, like, you know, sweating about it, you know, let me get my stats together before I get out. But, like, you know, like, I think it's very difficult for us to know each other's stories, you know, especially when we're traveling on the world in like a different skin. It's very difficult for me to know your story. You're Pakistani, you're not Indian, right? You know, the more loved, no, I'm kidding. You know what I'm saying? But, you know, like, you know, there's this, you know, like to go through the strife of like, you know, like your history, what's in your DNA. You know, there's a bloody war in your DNA. You know what I mean? It's hard being a Muslim. It's hard, you know, like having other people try to understand that. You know, so we have our white voices and we make jokes like we make jokes, you know, and there's part of us that's just buried. And that's the part that just needs to be unearthed. We need to like get to a point where we can just be ourselves and just be accepted by who, of the people who are in positions of power, and really be able to tell our stories. And again, I'm just reiterating the same thing I've said all night, but you know, that's it for me.
All right, well, thank you for joining us.
That makes 3 of us.